everybody. My name is Jim Craig. I'm glad to be here this evening. Just want to share with you some awesome photographs. So this presentation is just simply the color railroad photography of Charles Herley, 1948 through 1951. And almost all of it is right here in Bedford. Who was Charles Herley? Well, Mr. Herley was born in Lafayette in 1921. His family moved here to Bedford, so he grew up probably trackside like a lot of us did. Went to St. Vincent de Paul, graduated from Bedford High School in 1939, worked for the Southern Railway for a little bit, and then I ended up as a postal carrier in Jeffersonville, Indiana. Family still lived here, so when he came up, he made a beeline to the tracks to take pictures of the trains. Very grateful he did that. I didn't get that in there right, I apologize. But he was a Mononeer, and that was an award given out, or a recognition of people that had more than 5,000 miles riding on the Monon. So it's a pretty big deal. I messed that up when I put it in there, I apologize for that. If you can't hear me, just yell. If I'm not speaking loud enough, because I don't like to use mics. And also, this is kind of an open session. I see people out here know more about some of these things than I do. So if you see something you want to look at, but if you like trains, if you like cars, and you want to see what Bedford looked like 75 years ago, see some pretty neat stuff. I need to thank a couple of people that want to wait to the end, because I thought everybody might leave. Annie Wilkinson, that's Charles Herley's daughter. She came up from Jeffersonville, and a couple years ago she contacted us at the Monon Railroad Historical Society about some slides her father had, and they're just, you're going to see, they're just outstanding. And I also have to thank Don Toon. I don't see Don here this evening, but he scanned the slides in. He knows how to bring old slides back, because when film's 75 years old, it doesn't do very well sometimes. Most of these have just turned out excellent. And myself and several people I see in here with the Monon Railroad Historical Technical Society, that's our website, and I do have a few calendars if anybody's interested. I've got applications that work. We'd love to have you as a member if you like the Monon, and that's our website. You can sign up online if you want to. There's also a Milwaukee Road Historical Association. They're a lot larger group than we are. We're just small compared to them, but you can find them on the website too. So here's Lawrence County when we had trains, but this line is still here. This is the Baltimore and Ohio, Tunnelton going through Mitchell, and we have the Monon coming up. And this was the Bedford Bloomfield branch, ran over to Switz City. And this was the Milwaukee, the blue line there. So we're going to look at some of the Milwaukee stuff first. So just share with you a little bit of information. The Milwaukee Road, it was a large railroad. It was one of the transcontinentals. I mean, you could get on a train in Helpville, Indiana, go to Chicago, stay on the same railroad, Milwaukee Road, and go to Seattle or Portland, Oregon. So it was a large railroad. And you can see Bedford down at the bottom right, went down through Terre Haute, went to Seymour, went to a little town called Westport, is where it stopped over there and met the New York Central Railroad. So if you look from Bensenville or Chicago south, most of that was in Illinois. Around Terre Haute, it crossed over into Indiana, and you can see it just kind of swings around to Bedford. It was very lucrative for the Milwaukee Road to obtain that line because look at all the connections they had. So they could, you make money what you pick up online. When you haul for another railroad, you don't make as much money. So that increased their traffic. Anything from northwest that came in, they could ship a nickel plate. Toledo, Peoria, and Western, New York Central, Wabash, B&O, Illinois Central, Pennsylvania. So they had a lot of connections. Plus, the reason they bought it was they needed coal. In the 1920s, they were paying $3 million for fuel transportation. That doesn't include buying coal. So when they had a chance to get down here and get the coal out of the coal fields, that's the main reason they bought that line. So here's Bedford. If you it's not bright enough to see, but here's the courthouse. So here's street running. We get to the Monon station. There's the team tracks. That went to the shirt factory. Came up here, crossed the Milwaukee. That next area there is what we refer to as Bedford Junction, and that's where the B&B took off. You can see there's a Y there. And it continued on north out of town, but the belt-looking part, that was Milwaukee Road. And you can see up the top where the foundry is now, a rail yard there. They had a pretty large rail yard, service facilities. And we also had the B&O. It snuck into town 100 years ago. So the B&O came into here, crossed over itself here, so under the Milwaukee Road there, and then tied into the yard to interchange traffic. This line just came up on the B&O, and you could walk from here up to the Monon station if you wanted to switch trains or go to the Milwaukee station. And here it went down to the Blue Hole Quarry, that line down through there. So that gives you an idea. And most of the photography is going to take place in those areas. So here's train number 1 from Terre Haute. You see, I did manage to find dates on some of them, but May 6, 1950. Now that's not much of a train for a locomotive of that size. Usually they ran what's called the doodle bug. We'll look at it. But if it was down, maybe broke down, then they'd put a regular steam engine on it. There's the same train on the Y heading up to the yard. Probably get serviced and eventually head back to Terre Haute. But that's a good example of the photography brought back to life. And if anybody wants to make a comment or wants me to back a slide up, or you want to know what something is, and I'm kind of hoping some people here will help me with a couple things. And there's a couple pictures of people in here that maybe you recognize as a distant relative. So there's up in the Milwaukee yards, northern part of the city, and there's the same train. It was probably being serviced at that time, and we'll turn around and head back to Terre Haute. This is near the yard also. It's another larger steam engine. It's a L3 class locomotive. It's a Mikado, a 282 wheel arrangement. And that just means you have a truck up here, 2 wheels on it. You have 8 wheels that are drivers. And we have another truck back here with a set of wheels on it. So it's a 282. You can see back over here, that's that odd-shaped, it used to be a junkyard there across from where Elliot's is now, like across from Colonial Bakery. It used to be a junkyard there. They had like a tripod-looking crane there. But that's where that is back there. That it's obviously painted silver, but gives you some perspective as to where that was taken. And this is a really awesome photograph. It's a double-headed steam engine headed to Terre Haute. You can see it's got oil tankers on behind it. This is the Monon tracks right in front of us, so it's just north of the Monon station, the one that's burnt down, and just a shell sitting over there about 2 blocks away. So in order to cross the track, and I'm not real sure, but sometimes it's just a manual crossing, and Vern, you can jump in if you remember, but then you have to go up and just like push a button on a pole to change the lights so he could proceed through, and it would stop the Monon trains. That was before you had to worry about people messing with stuff. And you can see the Milwaukee station that was moved downtown there in the background to give you some perspective also. And there's another engine running light. It's crossing I Street. Standish Feed Store would be there on the immediate right. We'd be standing at the station looking east. And those buildings on the left are still there also. I went by today, but I can't remember what's in there. This is right between 5th Street and 6th Street, just a little bit south of the Milwaukee Yards. And several in this series of pictures, so I think he was probably backing up, switching, moving cars around before heading back to Terre Haute. And it's kind of interesting sometimes to figure out where these pictures were taken, but that house there in the background, it stood till about 2 years ago. So when I found that old house, and trees were all around it and the window arrangement, then I knew that's exactly where it was taken. And that's the same locomotive. Again, just a good example of the older photograph being brought back to life.
Is that just coal soot that you see? The
Yeah.
black smoke?
Yeah.
And then the white steam, right?
Yeah, the white is steam,
I don't remember.
but it's
that.
kind of like these diesels you see around here in the trucks. The guys like to stop and blows out a bunch of black smoke. If he's not running, just kind of sitting and backing up, it has a tendency to put out more smoke sometimes. And this is in the service area, the Milwaukee yards. It's an L2 locomotive. The Roundhouse is here. They didn't have a coaling tower to load the locomotives, so they use this crane here with this clamshell bucket. And you can see another locomotive sitting there. That looks like an old gondola that they put the ashes into and scattered those along the tracks. If you've ever walked the Milwaukee Road, there's a washout. You can see all those little cinders still there. These are like smoke boxes, so they park the engines underneath there to get the smoke out so it wouldn't engulf them when they're in there trying to work on the locomotive. And that's the same engine, just a different view. See on the far left, they did have a water tower there. And you can see where there's water here, just hook onto it, fill the tender. July 4th, 1949. I think these young men you see there on the right are probably like maybe Mr. Herley or myself and some of the people I see in here, but who wants to go to Wilson Park and watch baseball? Well, you can go see the steam locomotive sitting there. I know when I grew up, the guys are real good about explaining stuff to you. They're taking you for rides. Mr. Herley honestly had a great relationship with a bunch of railroaders because he captures some really fantastic stuff. So it's like the engineers there, maybe the hostler that's out that time-honored tradition with the long spout oil can oiling his locomotive. I mean, he's got a couple young men there checking things in. And you can see a gun there on the left full of coal, probably from Clay County or Vigo County, I would guess. This is on July 4th also, so there wasn't a lot of activity. But you can see the water tower, the sand tower is that structure right over the locomotive on the left.
What was that for?
Traction,
Oh,
as they're going up hills, pulling a load, they start to slip. These domes up here had sand in them, and pipe ran down in front of the drivers so they could get a grip and get up the hill, hopefully.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
where are these tracks located? I'm lost.
Up by the foundry.
Okay. That's
I've
good.
got another map here to show you again, Ken.
Jim, that one engine stayed there in the yard, so wasn't it? Was it the yard engine, and then the other engine took the train back and forth to Terre Haute?
Yeah, they had a yard goat. You'll see a picture of it here in a minute. Yeah, smaller than.
And then when the Roundhouse, when they turned that engine around so it would go back to Terre Haute?
Yeah.
Am I getting ahead of you?
Well, not necessarily, because there's a Y at the end. So if they wanted to go to Terre Haute, they headed this direction. If they wanted to go on to Seymour or Westport, they took the Y the other direction.
Yes.
Those buildings were there till for quite a long time. I remember the 60s walking up there and looking at the Roundhouse. There wasn't anything in it at that time, but it was still there. A lot of those structures were. It was like a recycling company moved in there for a lot of years. And those buildings, they're all gone now. And that's the same day, but see the cranes there loading coal into their tender for the next trip east or west or north or south. This is in the yard itself. That's probably the yard goat, the switch engine, moving cars around. But you got to realize there was a lot of business in Bedford. between the stone industry and about everybody brought stuff in by rail. My grandfather had a little feed store there in town on 17th Street, Craig's Feed Store, and we would have to go up to the team tracks and unload Karina Chow's feed into the truck, and then take it back to the feed mill and unload it and stack it. So that's how we got our feed. And the salt came out of Milwaukee area. It always came in on the Milwaukee, and it'd either be parked up near the freight station in Milwaukee, or sometimes it'd be parked at Williams at the Williams Mill. So Leland Williams and Grandpa, they kind of worked together. They may not need a whole load, so they'd split the load. So sometimes they'd go out there and load salt. Excuse me, load salt. And that was the hardest.
There should be a water right there.
I'm prepared. So you had to load salt because it's only stacked at this high. And a 100-pound bag, you had to distribute the weight of the car. So it's always been over picking that stuff up. Mr. Herley also climbed onto box cars to get good shots. I'm guilty of doing that myself. That's the only way to get good shots sometimes. But to shoot color film back then was just amazing. Plus, he didn't waste any film. He took a good photograph, or he didn't take it. Every one of these are just outstanding photographs. But there shows you better the Roundhouse. And you can see the stone mills in the background, which claimed by that time they were owned by General Motors, probably in the 50s. I don't know when that took place, but at some point General Motors took those stone mills over.
You know when the Roundhouse was built, when that come in?
I'd have to look and see. I don't know off the top of my head. Does anybody else have an idea?
Same time frame as the depot, 1899, 1900.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we can see it's all Bedford limestone too. It wasn't like a lot of them brick. It was limestone. In fact, the shops they built in Terre Haute were Indiana limestone also.
I think GM took that over at 43.
43. I knew it was around the war. I just didn't know when. There's a 280 just coming out of the Roundhouse. But he also, unlike myself, I usually had the sun on the wrong side of everything when I took pictures. But, the sun is perfect, so you can see all the detail on that. Just an outstanding photograph.
What was the Roundhouse for?
That's why they did the service work on the locomotives. There was usually a turntable in the middle, so they could pull in, go into different stalls. Some of the roundhouses for the big railroads, they were almost a 360. Just enough room to get in and get on the turntable and get into a stall.
I think they have one in the Ford Museum.
I think they do too. I know they have a turntable there. Again, he's climbed up on a boxcar and see an empty gondola there, probably had stone in it. But just awesome shots of something that's gone. And there's beside the Roundhouse, and as black as all this is, that must have been a good spot to park him because it just turned it all black right there. But that's an L3 class locomotive too. That one was built in 21 and was scrapped in 55. Same locomotive. But they had a machine shop there, they had car shops, they did upholstery work, they did everything in these Bedford shops. And even the ordinary cabooses photographed in. And Milwaukee was unique in that their cabooses were always painted orange instead of red like a lot of them were. And they're all rib side. So they built theirs a little bit different, built them all in their shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So here comes our Doodlebug, or Train 1. That's a gas electric. And there's our station that's downtown now. If you can see that Bedford sign there, those are brass letters on there. I don't know who ended up with them, but they made a good find. But I remember as a young man walking up there and looking, and there was over them was a sign that said Bedford, but it was nailed over those signs. When you looked up, there was a gap about like that. So I know for a long time, those, I don't know why they covered them up with a different sign that said Bedford, but they did. They disappeared somewhere. But you can see the water tower there also. Tom, you remember seeing those, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add about those gas electrics?
I only got to see it at the R Street crossing going from, coming from Terre Haute. I didn't get to see much of it.
Well, there wasn't that much business, and you know, you couldn't just quit. It had to be approved by the Interstate Commerce Commission before you could stop running, and they weren't real fast sometimes, so they had to continue to provide service even if nobody rode the train. And that's what they normally ran, something very light. And like so we saw the steam engine there earlier, that was, like I said, that was probably broke down or doing repairs for the reason they had the steam engine. Sometimes you look at slides, it's hard to tell, but this one's actually in backwards. So this is where the Milwaukee Trail is if you were on 16th Street looking south, because the track actually curves around to the right. So this one's inverted, and Mr. Herley ran across the bridge and caught it going also. And it's a little hard to see, but if you see that marker on that telegraph pole, it says 261, so that means it's 261 miles from Chicago. And of course, over here is where they're building that sewer thing. That's going to be interesting when the wind blows. That's another sore spot, tearing down O Street trestle. But there's the dude boat crossing O Street trestle. And there it is, crossing. Right here is the Baltimore and Ohio tracks where it came into the Monon yard to interchange traffic. And right in front of us here, that's the Monon. On the far left, that was the old Colonial Bakery.
Oh, yeah.
I think that block wall's still there too, but that's all grown up trees. This is the last train. That's why there's photographers there documenting that. So it was on July 15, 1950 is when passenger service stopped on the Milwaukee. See if I recognize any of those people. Well, that's Engineer Barnes, Brakeman Downing, our conductor Curry. Don't know who this fellow is, he's the baggage man. And this is our RPO agent. If you look, he's got a sidearm there on the left.
Oh, my gosh.
So if you can see behind Curry, it says U.S. Mail Railway Post Office. So they grabbed mail and route, sorted it, kicked the bag out the next station. So that's how mail service worked back in the day. Well, eventually steam engines were replaced by diesel engines. So there's one of the diesels that was assigned to Bedford for a while. It's the 1882. It's an Alco product, the American Locomotive Company. It's built in 1951, and 15 years later, it was scrapped. It's a Model S4, if that means anything to you. And this would be, looking at the yard, this would be the east side of the yard. Foundry would be right back here. That mill over there is still there. It's another business now. And this is just a little bit farther up. Somewhere over here is where the B&O came in and tied into the Milwaukee yard. I just never been able to figure out exactly where that was. But it was 100 years ago and things change sometimes. So there we have a, called an ABA set of F7 Milwaukee units. This is a second paint scheme. It's maroon and orange. On the F7s, they pretty much replaced all the steam engines. So they put them out of service. Milwaukee ordered 102 of those locomotives. And there's the same train which is getting ready to pass under 16th Street. The Pizza Hut would be there on the left, and the new Suey's, whatever that is there on the right. And you can see the silver boxcar with that also going back to crane. I'm sure it had bombs or fuses or something in it.
What year again is this picture?
Sometime 58, 59, somewhere in that time frame. There's 5th Street. This was a part of the Bedford machine, and Clay helped me out there. What was that?
Bedford Foundry and
Bedford
Machine.
Foundry and Machine. Okay, thank you. And you can see the yard goat there, the Milwaukee switch engine. And there you can see the parallel tracks in this area with the Monon, and you see he's got a load of stone coming up. So he's been down to Murdoch, to the Olytic area, East Olytic, pulling stone out of there, bringing it back up the hill. And at this point, we're going to transition over to the Monon. So, first few slides, we're going to start here in Mitchell. We're going to go up, we'll see a slide of crossing the White River. Then we'll see a slide of a crossing Leatherwood Creek. And then coming around the curve, then we'll get into town. So there's a southbound at Mitchell. Those are the Baltimore and Ohio tracks right in front of us. You see the Monon station, Mitchell station on the right. And these were pretty much new locomotives. So this would have been around 1947. That's a 51A, and the engine behind it is 51B. And it's also an A unit. An A unit just has a cab on it. A B unit does not have a cab. So that's what the difference is. But it's two A units. And there's the same locomotive in Mitchell, and it interchanging with the B&O, moving cars around. The B&O will be back here. And it's the only time I've ever seen this, but there's a water tower there. And I don't know if it's for the Monon or the B&O. But I've never seen a steel water tower. There was one in Bedford also. You can see the base of it right across from Myers on 13th Street. If you walk up through there, you can see where it's sat. Still there. You got to be dedicated to walk down to the river and take some of these photos. But that's a northbound, and there's an example of an ABA set of locomotives. We can't see the engine number, but say for example it's number 63. Well, one unit would be 63A, one would be 63B, one would be 63C. So why do you do that? Some of you guys know, help me out.
Now, they need the extra engine to push.
Well, they need the extra horsepower, but also, if it's the same number, they're trying to get around union work rules. They didn't want to put a crew on each engine. So they called them all the same number, and eventually it worked out. They renumbered some of them. And that was nationwide. Everybody did that.
Is that the bridge that, where we only see the pairs now?
No, that bridge is still there. Somebody set it on fire 15 years ago. You know, there's supposed to be they're working on the Monon South Trail from Mitchell on down. And there's supposed to be a trail called the Bedford 7 that goes from here to Yawkey. and across the country, but I haven't seen much action on it, so don't know if that'll come to be or not. So here's a southbound train on the bridge. You see the refrigerator cars. There's a lot of traffic with the Milwaukee with those refrigerator cars. I wish I knew more about where they came from and where they were going, but you know, they could be apples from Washington going to Louisville and then going farther south or east from there. I'm sure this photo was not too long after that train. This is a local headed south to work in Mitchell, Orleans, Salem, probably end up in New Albany and then make its way back. Okay, now we've gone through Sand Pit and we're crossing Leatherwood Creek. And I know from personal experience that is hard to get to. The banks of the creek right there are steep, a lot of vegetation around there. The water's probably another 50 feet below. In fact, I remember as a kid, we'd play in this area, walking out over that bridge and looking and thinking, my dad's letting my kids play on the railroad tracks. I'd be mad at him for playing like that, but you just didn't think anything about it. But it's a nice shot, a unique shot. That bridge is still there. It's right behind Mitchell, the Honda shop. It's right behind there. You can see it this time of year. So if you come up and go around the curve, that's where he took this photograph. So right behind us would be the recycling center now. The train curves right along through there. And if you look down here, you can see a fence post. That's pretty steep. Those are the Leatherwood Creek bottoms, and Lex Rare owned that property, but they always let us ride horses over there when we were kids. So we'd ride down through all the time and tie the horses up, and we'd come up here and play. So now we're going past George's Gateway, and we're coming up by Green Hill Cemetery. This photograph will be taken from J Street. I think there's like gardens and stuff right in this area. And street running, so these are all pretty much the 5 blocks from 18th Street to 13th Street, where all these next photographs were taken. So we've crossed 18th Street, we're almost to 17th Street. That's pretty close to where somebody lives.
My house.
Yeah. When Amtrak ran and Monon passenger service also, if they had a rowdy drunk, they were known to stop the jail, go get the jailer, and escort that guy out the train. Amtrak even did that too, I know something. Too bad the airlines can't do that today.
Oh my gosh.
But just right in front over here, we always called that the bank. Now when I was a kid, there wasn't any vegetation there, it was just a mowed bank, but we'd sit there after school and just watch the trains go by. St. Vincent would be right behind, right over the cab, just to give you an idea. So this gives you an idea what downtown Bedford looked like 75 years ago. The buses on the left are interesting. They both say Olytic. So I don't know if Olytic had a bus service. Buses for the team, I don't know. If anybody recognizes any cars there, I'm not a car guy, so I don't know car models, but.
That's a fancy car.
Yeah, it is a nice car. There's a lot of nice cars in there. Some Fords over there on the left.
The Diane shop.
But that's the northbound, the thoroughbred, train number 6 from Louisville to Chicago. I'm not sure if Mr. Herley's taking a picture of the truck or train.
This is J Street.
Yeah, that's J Street. He's headed north.
Oh, the brick street.
This is north.
Yeah. You know, in this time period when he started photographing, the Monon Railroad was in bad shape financially. World War II was over, economy was starting to come back, things were starting to really pick up. And in 46, they appointed a fellow named John Berger president of the Monon. He had a lot of big ideas. He was a railroad man his whole life. His father was a railroad man. So they gave him the Monon, and he made all kinds of improvements immediately. During World War II, the Monon had an increase in traffic, but not like some of the railroads. It didn't really go through big industrial areas, so it didn't have a big influx, but the equipment was worn out, the steam engines were worn out, so he immediately started to order new diesels. And he wanted to bring back passenger service because it was pitiful. These 80-year-old coaches people were riding in, but everybody was buying streamlined trains, and they couldn't get any cars for like 3 years. So he bought hospital cars from the military, had the Lafayette shop guys rebuild them, and then that became what the streamlined trains. So these are all northbound. There's the tail of one of them, but I don't ever remember this brick building there next to the Citizens Bank. But
That's interesting.
I don't know if anybody else knew P. Dinks. I always rode a big Harley, but I just wondered if that motorcycle was there. That's P. Dinks' Harley. I know Tim knew P. Dinks.
Is that a policeman or just a guy?
No, it's just a guy there. And obviously it's a Sunday because there's not any cars there.
Yeah.
When things used to close on Sunday. So here's a southbound. Looks like Buck Lemon and maybe some construction going on. Looks like they're building a Penny's building there maybe. Drugstore. Yeah, the Toggery's there. Men's store.
So where's the alley? Where's Pepper's? Where would the bakery have been? Right. That red building?
Wasn't it right next to the alley?
Yeah, it was.
So it would have been right there, but that's a different building.
Yeah,
Must-
that's the grand.
The train crews were known to stop there, run in and grab, especially early in the morning, hot donuts and take off.
Wow.
It's like Smith's Jewelry Store. I don't know if that's Stevenson's clothing back then, but it's the same building. That guy's probably late to get back to Stevenson's to train body. Southbound, just a different angle. Neat old street lights there. That had to be pretty early in the morning.
What kind of speed did they have at that time coming through town? Did they have some rules and regulations about how fast they could go?
Yes, what I remember, it was 8 and 8. So passenger trains 8, freight trains 8. But before that,
That's where the gas station.
I don't think they were limited. I'll show you a sign here in a minute that people probably want to get out of the way. But I can remember a train going through town at 8 miles an hour, but 110 cars later, they're flying about 40 going downhill. I remember people walking to the back of the store get away from.
Going through Bedford Square though, you're on top of the hill.
Right.
After they get through on either side while you're going
Yeah.
downhill, so if that engine gets going, then the rest of the train,
Sure, yeah, and it's
the
a,
caboose is gonna be flying through the square.
yeah, and they did.
And they did.
That was for the engines. So this paint scheme was developed by Raymond Lowery. He was a famous designer, airplanes, trains, everything. He came up with this paint scheme, but it was a dark gray on the bottom, and then a white stripe, but on each side of the stripe was a small gold stripe. And then what was called Monon red, and then a lighter gray on the top. But you can see in this photograph that the roof is black because that light gray got dirty real fast and looked bad. So then they just painted the whole top black so it didn't look like that. But Mr. Behringer really promoted the Monon. He rode the trains himself. Well, just like the Monon here, if you ride 5,000, you get recognized for that. But he did a lot to bring the railroad back. There's one of the parlor observation cars they made at Lafayette. And that is crossing 17th Street there. Building above it would be the Diana Shops. Grandpa's but anyway, a truck driver with a flatbed semi was pulling across here and got hung up, and the train couldn't stop, so it drug the trailer and smashed that little restaurant, and then they moved Candy Corner across the street. Okay, this is just the Monon station area. So these photographs will be right in this area. Where the Milwaukee goes across there towards the top, that's kind of where these stop. But he actually did a very good job capturing the end of steam on both railroads. So this is, we're getting right down the end of steam on the Monon. That's a 231. And of course, that's right in front of the station. These cars are parked in front of the freight station to load and unload freight. But that's just an awesome photograph.
Was there a rationale to the numbering system they followed, or they were just random numbers again?
No, there was a numbering system. I don't know what it had to do with, I mean, because some are going to see your 500 class, 200 class. Those are the small ones with small drivers and worked well at stone quarries because they didn't have to go very fast. But there's another view of it, and see Mr. Herley climbed up on the boxcar again and get a good shot of that, which we appreciate. I couldn't memorize all that stuff, so I cheated a little bit. But it's a Class A1B switcher. It's an 060, so no front truck, 6 drivers, no back truck. Built in 1900. Lafayette shops rebuilt it in 24 and used it for 49 years. So they got their money's worth out of that locomotive. So right in front of the station, again, we're up on top of a boxcar, and hopefully we're holding on. But the 231, and this is an RS2 locomotive. It's delivered in 47 from Alco. The original paint scheme was black and yellow, but it only lasted maybe a little over a year. Yes, too much to take care of. There's also the PR side of it too. So they painted the freight engines black and gold, which kind of represents Purdue University and DePaul, as the train passed through both of them. And the red and gray, from what I read, Indiana University and Wabash College. And then St. Joseph or Rensselaer, I don't know what their colors were, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was one of those 2 colors. So they repainted them in this paint scheme, black and gold. And good looking locomotives. And under the Monon there, if you can see it, it says the Hoosier line on it. And look at the freight house. I mean, the railroads kept things up. They really did. Kept things painted. See, it's kind of a maroon and light gray color. This section down here was the original freight station. And in the late 30s, they added this piece on, which you see above the locomotives, the 2-story section, just to handle more freight. So those, like I said, were built by Alcoa. They're 1,500 horsepower, engines 21 through 29. They went to the LN Railroad in the merger in 71. They didn't last long there. Some of them were made into slugs. The rest of them were scrapped. Just another shot of the number 27. This track right here on the right, that's actually a Milwaukee track. It came in there. They would leave coal cars there and unload them, because if you remember, it was coal and ice is what was sold there back in the day. This is one of my favorite photographs of Mr. Herley's, but you know, the sun setting in the west just brings out all the detail of that locomotive. See the Milwaukee station over on the left. He's actually working the team track there, probably either picked up some cars or dropping some cars off. And the team track is just that you had to have some place to unload for kind of the general public, so to speak. So they just put a little siding in. Teams of horses will come up and unload. So that word team track stays even to today. That's what they call them. So they just pull up and unload a car. That's a electric motor division SW1. It's a 600 horsepower. The Monon had one, and then they got rid of it. And GM did a study and told them they actually needed 2, so then they bought 2. Nobody really understands why they did that. But the number 6 there was assigned to Bedford, and number 5 was assigned to New Albany. So delivered in August of 49. This one was sold in 63 to Union Tank Car Leasing Company. It's probably about the same time the stone industry just about was not much business anymore. It all gone to trucks. Here's another shot in front of the depot. These are unique BL2 locomotives. They're electric motor division. It was their attempt for a road switcher, and see, it's kind of got a funny design. Well, that was designed so the engineer could see his brakeman easier. They're either ugly or handsome, depends on how you look at it. But there were 9 of them total. One of them is still around. It's down in Kentucky at the Kentucky Railway Museum. So 1,500 horsepower. First batch of 6 engines delivered April 48. Then they ordered 3 more in May of 49. Again, just some scenes there to pull into the depot. There's a water plug for the water tank, which I said is up on 13th Street. Either the engineers came across or it's possibly a head brakeman. But there you can see the dark gray, the gold stripe, the white, another thin gold stripe. So these are the passenger locomotives. They were F3 locomotives, 1,500 horsepower, delivered in May of 47. So there were 8 passenger locomotives ordered, painted red and gray, and they worked in usually back-to-back sets. Here's just another nice photograph of the thoroughbred coming into the station from the top of a boxcar. Thoroughbred again, can see the trucks there. They're probably unloading freight for the Railway Express Agency, which was right about where this photograph's taken from. So it's like the old school FedEx, UPS delivery. The northbound thoroughbred. I remember taking my grandfather up there. He taught at the Great Lakes Naval Center. And we'd take him up the station. He loved the food on the Monon, and he'd go to Chicago and then head up to the training center. Another nice shot. And there you see Eepee's on the left now.
Oh, yeah. Is that building still there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
It's right next to Armstrong Carpet,
Yes.
which is the house on the left.
So here we have the main, then we have the passing siding, this track. This is the track that goes into the freight station. And these tracks go over to the team tracks and the shirt factory, which is Hawkins Bailey now. Early morning. I was trying to figure out which slides to leave out. I'm like, they're all cool. There you see the shirt factory in the background. See the ice house. This is very unique. I don't quite know what's going on with this train, but obviously they're not Monon passenger cars. They look like Pullman cars. It's got a B unit on it, which I've never seen a B unit on that passenger train before. So it had to be one of the demonstrator units that Electromotive sent around the country. But the Monon ordered 18 of those new locomotives to start getting rid of the steam engines. They were all falling apart anyway. And in June of '47, there was a horrible wreck at Ash Grove up north, and 2 sets of locomotives hit head on. So 3 of them were completely destroyed. The other 3 had heavy damage. And then in July, they had the derailment just south of Salem at Fog and wrecked 3 more of their engines. So half the new engines they had were suddenly gone, which really put them in a bind. So EMD had these demonstrator units, so they bought those. So that one has to be one of the demonstrator units painted for the Monon to supply steam, because the freight locomotives didn't supply steam generators. But that had to be some kind of special train. I don't think it was a Derby train because there's not enough nice fancy cars on it. The Derby trains are all private cars and the best varnish out there. So they're hooping up train orders. The operator of the station had a kind of a Y-shaped stick, for lack of a better term, string on it. He'd tie it to that, hand it up to in this case, the brakeman, had their train orders on it, and then he would hold another one up for the guy in the caboose for the conductor to get his orders. He's on the passing siding, so chances are there's another northbound train coming. And there you see the tan building, that's the Railway Express Agency. It's still there today, but Railway Express. Delivered in 46 and 47. Another nice shot on the main. You can see on the passing siding there, we always call them poppers, but they're little motor cars. So the track gangs, that's what they rode in, and also the signal maintainers. As you can see the guy there, on a cold day, I don't think I'd want to be riding on that one. He didn't have much protection. But eventually they might put a shield on it. Some of them even enclose them. But what was neat, pictures I've seen, and like I said, I just brought stuff that Mr. Herley shot. They would paint like a semaphore signal on the front of their motor car to help identify that it was theirs. So we got freight locomotives on the passenger train again. That's the same train. Right in front of it, you can see a little bit of the old International Harvester building. That's just a neat shot. He waited there, and so one train's on the passing side in, the other one's headed north. And there's the end of it. Except Mr. Herley didn't waste any film. The engineer is looking backwards, so they're probably picking up some cars for the Milwaukee Road, doing some interchange work. You can see the International Harvester, Milwaukee Station, the freight station on the left for the Monon. So there's a photograph we took of the station agents. I guess anybody recognizes anybody there, do you? But he also took photographs of people too, which is kind of neat. So Bedford Junction is just up a little bit from the station. So there on the left, that's where Bedford Junction is. There's a Y there. It actually went through the stone mill. I don't know if you can see this light or not, but it actually went through the Shea Mill. Part of that did, if they needed to head that direction. And you can see where the round table is. There's locomotive servicing facilities there. And Bedford was considered a yard.
Most towns didn't have that.
What's that?
They are.
Well, they might have sidings, but New Albany had a yard, Bedford, Bloomington, Lafayette, Hammond. So there's the original paint scheme for a NW2 locomotive. Again, he was able to get the crew out and take the picture. So this is Bedford Junction. That would be Bedford machine there, Joe Elliott's operation in that old stone mill. The building right behind there, all you can see is a black roof, but that was a yard office and scale house. So those are rated for 1,000 horsepower. Came on board in January of '47. Went the L&N Railroad in the merger, and they retired it in 1983. So there's another view of Bedford Junction. So the track's on the left. There was a small yard there on the left. But here's the Milwaukee interchange track. See the refrigerator cars. Like I said, don't know what's in them, but a lot of refrigerator traffic sent to the Monon in Bedford. See the stone train coming back. Another switcher over on the left. See the track scales right in front. So you can see the sign there right in front of the locomotive. It says 50 and 45. So that was the speed limit for trains at that time. And if you know anything about the Monon, it's kind of curvy here in Bloomington. A lot of times you see a coal car over here being unloaded. See the caboose up on the left. And down on the very bottom here, you just can't see much of it. There's a railroad crossing right there. And I was up there snooping around a few months ago. it's still there, the scrappers missed it. But there's a tree growing up through it, weeds all over it, but it's actually still there. They kept one on this side of the track and one on the other side of the track. You know, if you have a derailment and tear something up, you can get another rail pretty quick. But the crossings, and it wasn't a true 90, so they had to be individually made, but they kept those right there in case they need. So this is at Bedford Junction. This is the servicing area, and you can see that 229 there, that steam engine, looks like it's just about worn out, and I'm sure it was. So it was a 480 E1A class Mastodon type locomotive built by Alco Brooks. In 1900, it also was rebuilt in 1924. It lasted until about 1948. And there's the 231 again with the yard crew. And there's the crossing on the other side of the tracks that I showed you just a minute ago, sitting there in front of us. This is the track where the B&O came in. I don't ever remember. Oil tanks over here on the left. That's the local switching. This is a crossing with the Milwaukee here, so northbound. And I know Mr. Herley took several photographs right in this area, because you can see this garden getting bigger all the time. It's a holdover victory garden. This is one of my favorite shots too. It's at Bedford Junction. So tracks took off this way and this way. It went to Bloomfield, Split City. This was a Milwaukee track here. But that's just a nice shot. Looks like I think I counted 12 cars on there, so that was a lengthy passenger train. You do see a lot of Pennsylvania Railroad gonds and flats because, well, at the time that was the largest railroad in the world. So you see a lot of their equipment they bar up, load stone on, and so forth. And this is a 3rd Street, right by the foundry. So, foundry needed rail service. The Monon could serve it on this track, and this track on the left over here, that would go to the Milwaukee yard, so the Milwaukee could service it if they needed to. And you can see he's probably going close to 40 already. See, kicking up dust, hadn't even gone half a mile yet. You see that semaphore on the left, right by the telegraph poles there?
What's the
Semaphore is it's a signal. It's right here.
Oh.
They've all got mile markers on them, and he's going so fast that it hadn't even started to drop yet. So as soon as they hit that circuit, that arm would fall down, but it hadn't even started to drop yet, so he was moving up. And remember that semaphore, I'll show it to you again here in a second. I don't know where these were taken, they're just awesome. I don't know if it was Murdoch or Dark Hollow, but the Monon served both of them. So, to get the Murdoch, we took the Monon out, you see Horseshoe Bend, it crossed the creek here, went up into a lake, and Dark Hollow went this way, and there you can see Dark Hollow. So I don't know which quarry these photographs have taken. But obviously by this time, stone business was running out. And it's grown up, but you can see there's a track over here, there's one taken off there. This is a Murdoch, but it gives you an idea of the track that are in these quarries. So, at the top, if you could picture Horseshoe Bend, there was right off there was a Y, and then there was 10 tracks there, basically just for stone, pulling out of that area that sat there. Then you cross Salt Creek again, then you come up here, and then you start into the quarries. And those are all switchbacks. So it was so steep they had to go up, throw the switch back this way, throw the switch and kind of seesaw to get up the side of those hills. But like I said, just all kinds of track work there to get to the quarries. So there's another stone train of derricks. Does anybody remember that water tower up there on the left? I was thinking it was on 37 north of Old Liddy. Does anybody remember that?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not either. It's, again, just trying to identify where these are taken, but this is all gone. And that's just an awesome photograph. Climbed up those blocks to get that stone train coming back. And he was also fortunate enough, he got a ride on that stone train too. And this one's really awesome, because we've got an Alco RS2 locomotive he's riding on, and right behind there is one of the steam engines. That's a very rare photograph. Then you can see it's all gondolas loaded with stone pulling out. So I don't know if it's Murdoch or Dark Hollow.
How would he get that picture?
Standing on the platform on the side, there's railings
little
on there.
platform.
Yeah. He also had an eye for the unusual too, so here's just a kind of random. That's pretty sad looking. That's actually in Wilmington, but that's one of the Monon's J3 steam engines that was just completely worn out after the war. Somebody's already stole the bell off of it, some other components, but nobody's got that plate right there yet. And that is solid brass. It's about this big. And, we were just lucky at the Monon Society. A fellow named Bob Schultz up in northern Indiana donated one to us for the 514. It's in our archives down in Salem. But just so that's a Milwaukee Road car. I don't know if that's a salesman's car or an exec out of Terre Haute. The plates are Indiana, so maybe it's somebody out of Terre Haute. But that's on J Street also, and that's Eepy's there behind, I guess before it was Eepy's. So it's right there at 13th and J. So there's a Loadmaster 5-ton overhead crane built by Bedford Foundry and Machine. So he climbed up, there's a gondola full of block stone, climbed up there to photograph it. Just an unusual load. That's in Milwaukee Yards. And here's another one. See, it's June of '51. It's the steel girders, so you can still make today. We've had a big debate about where this is. So far, nobody's been able to agree where it is, but this is 1947. Those are brand new Monon boxcars with the Hoosier line scheme across the top. Pullman Standard built those in Michigan City, but it doesn't look right for Michigan City. We don't think it's Lafayette, but anyway, there's a debate going on right now with some guys about where that's located. But it's just a wonderful shot of new rolling stock. So our freight station has been repainted. We spent less money over the years, so we just painted back a solid gray when it did need painting. But that's a very interesting boxcar too. It was part of the promotional program, a high-speed merchandise service. So those just ran online, so if you wanted to ship a pump to Lafayette or Crawfordsville or Hammond, you could take it up there, and load it, take it up the line. And this is at Bedford Junction. It was Bedford Ready Mix at the time, but it's one of the new Monon gondolas being unloaded. See how by today it's almost primitive the way they had to unload that, just a clamshell bucket and stack it, and then they would load it up here and make concrete. Now, Lincoln Avenue would be just to the left. This is the most famous boxcar in the world. Well, John Behringer, like I said, he was a railroad man, but he worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad as a young man. And think about trying to keep track of all these box cars and flat cars are gone. No computers, no scanners, no GPS. It's all paper pencil. So he never understood why they had like 6, 7-digit numbers on box cars, because he had to write everyone down. So he thought, if I ever get in charge, I'm going to change that. So when he became president, started with boxcar 1, 2, 3. So this boxcar was extremely famous. They followed it all around the country, went from Miami to Los Angeles. The first year they got everywhere that was loading everywhere it went. The first paid load, it went to Crawfordsville. I'm not sure where it went after that, but with rail enthusiasts, there's a car you always look for. You can find boxcar 1. And it was brought here, I think in 48 for the Indiana Limestone Company's centennial celebration. They brought it back to Bedford and sat there for a while as part of their displays. Monon tried something different for passenger service. It's a bug car. It's a rail diesel car. So it only lasted 3 weeks, unfortunately, so it didn't last very long. But you can see it would leave Bedford at 3:30, and you could go to Blooming, Greencastle, Crawfordville, Lafayette, Monon, Chicago, and then on the way back. But Mr. Herley did get another great shot of it when it was in Bedford. And again, you can see the Railway Express Agency office down in the distance. But they were self-powered, so if you had more students, say, going from Lafayette to Chicago, just slap another one on there because they were self-powered. And, but anyways, 3 weeks, and they decided not to go that route. I just thought this was a neat photograph. Probably taken the same day as the very first one I showed you with the snow. So the train, passenger train's probably gone through, and the switchers picked up that flat car. Those are yellow tractors, or maybe Minneapolis Moline. So maybe they've picked them up from Milwaukee and getting ready to move them over to the team track. There was an unloading dock over there, so you can just drive them right off the side of the flat cars, but just a neat photograph. I thought this was very unique.
What is that?
It's a giant limestone ball. I don't know if it's the earth. I can't tell. Yeah.
It almost looked like you can see Japan with the Korea
Yeah.
coming down above Japan there. See?
And there was a note on the slide. I think it weighed like 44,000 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you can see they got it wedged in there. You can imagine if that broke loose, it'd run the tree. But you can see General Motors in the background. The old stone mills. This was actually a railroad facility at one time. It's went to GM, did all that. Okay, there's that signal I showed you a few minutes ago when the passenger train was flying down through there. Okay. Well, here's the same gondola, but I cannot figure out where it is now. That looks like the office for Bedford Machine, but the building's not over here. Obviously, Carnival's going on there. It's kind of cool, but I don't know where that is sitting. Clay, you have any thoughts on that one?
No.
Do you have a date for it?
I'm not sure.
Because you could probably find a newspaper account at that time.
Yeah. As soon as I get time, I'll look that up because I've got a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of stuff I want to go back and research. And just a troop kitchen car from World War II that originally was on passenger trains, and they used it for a work car, but it was kind of unique. The guy second from right is John Behringer, the president of the railroad. I don't recognize the other guys, but I'm guessing this is part of the 1947 centennial celebration here in Bedford. And I don't know if Mr. Herley staged those guys, and if we run up there like I do from the side and take a picture, while somebody else is taking a picture.
It'll look like there's looking the other direction.
Yeah. And those Monon caps, that was part of the celebration too, they gave those away. And that's Mr. Behringer and his son Jack. So I wish I knew more about that photograph, how that came to be. It's a different suit, so I don't know where Mr. Herley took that photograph. And there's one of the new cabooses from International Car Company, getting ready to head down J Street. There you can see the speed limit again through town, 50 and 40, so probably didn't want to linger on the tracks very long. Of course, that was Lance Lumber, and that building's still there today. And just really appreciate Mr. Herley documenting this neat time in history and taking all these wonderful photographs. And that's how the paint scheme was for the Monon cabooses when they were first delivered. Then they went back with a larger Monon outside. But that's it.